what I feel, and statistically, what is known is that in the self-help world, in the entrepreneurial advice world, so many people are out there telling people what to do. And what they're saying people get stuck on is the action part.
Okay.
All right. So, like, even with your book, when we're talking about going through manifesto, the MyOS, asking yourself all those really hard questions, right? Because it's deeper than just, business advice. It's the inner work that has to get done. My question to you is, how are we going to differentiate in getting over the hump of getting stuck in the question part, in the taking action part?
Sure. Well, the first thing that we did was what you're saying is true, right? People are struggling to take action, and it's because it hasn't been simplified. They do a lot of memorization, right? They try to remember all these different things and then go deploy them. But what we do is we ask questions that allow someone to get a component of it, of the item. They get another component, get another one, then put it all together, distill it down, and say, here's my definition of a good person. And so we got to remove the burden, right? And so asking very simple questions that are easier to answer, but they're more thought provoking. Getting all of those answers, bringing it together, and we have the items coming in from different areas. It's not like you just write down answers to things. Well, what's your definition of a good man? Well, I think a good man is this. No, we tap into different areas that are very easy for people.
So
As
to get the answer of what defines a good man for you, I mean, could you answer that if I just put you on the spot?
Answering like what is a good man to me?
Yeah, like what if you were to create the perfect model of a good man for you, what does that look like?
I mean, I think for me, integrity is a huge part of it. I think for me, it's funny because in business it doesn't always work.
Yeah.
Because you grow up hearing people say all the time, right? Nice guys finish last and all that. And there's a component of truth to that. I think if you look at some savages out there, right? But for me, like at the end of the day, I gravitate towards good people. I try to just be a good human being, right?
Mm.
No matter what it is, even if there's something in it for me, or being in. And it kind of goes what we talked about before, John. Like part of my problem, I think, growing up and discovering myself as I got older was trying to be like a people pleaser. Like I'm less apt to call someone out as opposed to like I kind of will adapt to just make them feel good. But going back to your question, I just think like call it a spidey sense, but like throughout my life, like I'm able to almost determine pretty quickly like the genuine nature of somebody. Like, is this a good person? Are their intentions good? Like I've got just my spidey. It's even when I'm not trying.
Mm.
It's like I just smell the bullshit. I always gravitate towards people that I know are being really themselves and they're authentic and like they care and they're just good people. And that's what I try to be. I think, I'm going to fail in life and have success in life, but I try to maintain that. I don't cross that boundary of, I'm going to, cross somebody or backstab somebody or do something. It's just not in me. Right. And I think at the end of the day, I can hold my head high, like when I'm 95 or whatever, like with some integrity, like, okay, maybe, I didn't get all the material things that I wanted, or, maybe I end up getting it, who knows? But I know that I did it the way that I think life should be lived. I always look at it from a perspective of how short this ride is, and how serious people take things that to me sometimes are really dumb.
Yeah.
And I do it too. I'm human. Yeah. But, at the end of the day, it's kind of like, how did you make somebody feel like for me, the business side, you're ambitious, you're driven and all that, but I get as much enjoyment out of like being a shoulder to cry on or sensing that, showing some empathy of like, okay, I understand it, and I've kind of taken that approach most of my life as being a good man. Like when someone flips me off in traffic, now when I was younger, things would have gone different. But now, I almost have like a level of, they're going through, like nobody wants to do that.
Right.
Like nobody wakes up going, I can't wait to flip people off today.
Yeah.
So I just understand, like I've been there, it's kind of like, okay, I get it, give them some grace. And to me, like just being a good man is just a good human being. I know to other people they define it differently, but
Yeah, I think that's one of the cool things is that when you're putting together your definition of a good man, it's not just for saying, "Hey, this is what I think it is." We actually want it to help guide our difficult decisions, right? And so when we're facing something that's difficult or important, we want to make sure that we make a decision that aligns with our personal definition of a good man. And it's tough to articulate it. And so if we go off of how it feels or whatever, we're going to be pretty close, like situationally, but it's not always more precise, and it's very difficult to share. So if I take all of the stuff that you just told me, how would that person address a different a situation? I don't really know because there's not an expression of the core values. There's not an expression of any virtue in there that really sticks out to you. There's no involvement of feedback that people have said. Like we're all good. We're made to be good, and we're given blessings of real strength. And your definition of a good person must involve those things because there's a lot to celebrate about you. And a lot of people's definition of a good man is outside of them.
Sure. Yeah.
Sometimes people take things like from the Bible and say, here's what a good woman is, right? And there's this ideal. And they forget that the ideal must involve you because you're asked of things at the appropriate measure for the person. You're not expected to have the same generosity level as I am. You might be given more, less, it might be the same, but the idea is that we matter. And so in the creation of the manifesto for us, we have all these different inputs, and then distill it down so that you actually are able to give someone a cheat sheet. Like, here's what it's like to work with me. Here are the things that give me energy. Here are the things that take away my energy. Here's what helps develop my trust. Here's some of the things that shrink my trust. Here are the things that are really important to me, my priorities. Here's what third-party assessments have said about me because my ideas are just my ideas. And then there's a really crucial element, and it's uh, I ask people to tell me about a person they admire, right? Because when you talk about a person that you admire, you hit on the things that are really important to you. And your definition of a good man must involve things that are really important to you.
Yeah. And so to get there, you mentioned there's like these data points that, so in the book, it's, got the questionnaires, you're asking, and then you get, like you said, you get input, then posing that, and you have like a juxtaposition, like look at the opposite of what you just wrote. And,
Sure.
like, that gives you answers.
Right.
So all these little things that kind of bring you to getting the answer of who you are. But I think even before that, I think there's a conversation around self-worth because
Mhm.
people don't even think they're worthy of being that good man, or good woman.
Sure.
So like, how are we addressing that?
Well, self-worth is a real problem, right? That's like a lot of people don't have it. And let's say what they've done is pushed aside self-worth and they value something else. Right? We have things that we value. It's just that oftentimes it's not ourselves, and it's a real problem. And so how do we look at that? And so one of the things in creating my personal definition of a good person, or for me, a good man, is that acknowledgement that I matter, right? I have to, like, I am allowed to have my own personal definition of a good man, and that's like my core identity.
It's game changer.
Y- y-
Like that's really the starting point to my mind is the game changer right there. It's like I matter enough.
Right.
But the world doesn't tell you that. Like it's always like I'm gonna please everybody else. Like you said, people pleasing constantly. I'm guilty of it constantly. Whether it's in relationships or business, you always want to please the person you're working with or being with.
Right.
But then that in some regards it diminishes your own character.
Well, there's self-erasure, right? So there's sacrifice. A lot of times we learn that we don't be selfish, right? But we should be teaching people to be selfish in some areas. As controversial as that sounds, right? If you're not going to make sure that you're okay, who is? And so love your neighbor like you love yourself. You must love yourself, but people ignore that part of it. And then when you do put some time in on yourself, a lot of times it's like you're being this bad person gets graded wrong. But like with my children, I want them to be making confident decisions, right? If I don't want them to pursue more than they're capable of doing, and I don't want them to pursue less. I want them to pursue what they believe is appropriate for them, right? And so like the definition of success to me is around the each person. You cannot have the same expectations on everybody. My right answers are different than yours. In business, people talk about it all the time. They want to run somebody else's plays. I want to run plays that are designed around me.
Yeah.
Well, how do I know what kind of plays to design? I must be able to identify this is my core identity. I must be able to state these things. I must know what gives me energy, takes my energy, what I want close to me. I must have the benefit of the doubt. My closest circle, if you don't give me the benefit of the doubt and I've got to go back and prove to you and prove to you and prove to you, like it's just exhausting. It's not for me. But that's my burden. A lot of people I know have zero need for the benefit of the doubt, right? That's not something that they need. I do.
Mm.
I do. It puts me at ease. I'm not settled without it. And so you have to have that you know, that personalized definition, and then you have to be able to share that with somebody. And then when you're facing something that's really important, you want to make a decision that you're proud of. And if you make a decision that aligns with your definition of a good person, right? No matter how difficult that decision was, how important that decision was, you can lay your head down at night feeling good about what you did.
Yeah.
And that's helpful.
You gotta trust that you're that good person, right? Like,
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting too because you get you take the manifesto for example, right? Which I think is, I mean, creating that on paper, to your point, like a lot of what I say when you think about yourself, it's very anecdotal, right? It's very hyperbole, but when you break it down into like this is what makes me tick, this is what makes me feel proud, and you've got that, it's very powerful. Like I've done this, most of my life. I've got notes galore, right? Things that kind of anchor me.
Mhm.
Like I get in the zone and I'm like, okay, I'm going to capture that thought because it anchors me. And then when I'm in a riff or something's going wrong, I can go back to it. And that I think is a great, much more in-depth way to do it is the manifesto. The other thing I would say to that, and this kind of goes back to our conversation about building a community around this.
Mm.
A lot of people, like the insights that you just gave, right? If I don't know that about you, you know that about yourself, but I don't.
Right.
That doesn't help us as a team. To get people to, although I think especially for men in particular, it's the hardest thing to do is like, okay, here's my manifesto, here's what my definition of a good man is. But now sharing that with anybody is like, it's very scary,
Sure.
So to create like a safe space in a community where people can kind of continue to go back to that anchor point
yeah.
and express what they're going through. I mean, very powerful to self-growth. I mean, huge.
Well, so the manifesto is like a present, like from John to John,
Yeah.
right? It's a personal item, and what I did was I said, okay, here's the full package, right?
Yep.
But I might not want to share that with everyone. Like everybody doesn't need to know what my priorities in my life
Sure.
are or all these different things, but there's parts of it. Right. And so I created something, it's like a cheat sheet. I call it a warning label. You're going to work with me. Like, here's some warnings for you, like because there you should know the side effects.
Yeah.
Right. You should know the side effects of it. If I'm going to work with somebody in my companies, right, it's the fastest way to get promoted and it's the fastest way to get fired, right? That's just a fact. If you're going to work closely with me, I'm going to be exposed to your work. I'm going to be exposed to your approach to the work and a lot of other things. And I'm going to say, hey, this person's got it or they don't, right? I'm going to make that call. But it's interesting, right? So another thing I say is I'm going to believe what you tell me, right? Very trusting. I want the benefit of the doubt. I'm going to give the benefit of the doubt. So I'm going to believe what you tell me. So be careful what you tell me. Because now if you tell me things that aren't true, I can't go through this where I have to spend a lot of time wondering whether or not you're telling me the truth, right? It's just not for me. Now I know that's true for a lot of people, but for me, it's at an extraordinarily high level, right? Whether it's the reason why doesn't matter. Is it because of the way I grew up? Is it because of this, that? Who knows? I'm not here to explain why because the why it would only be my current interpretation of why it happened. I'm comfortable saying I'm just not very trusting. Though I am trusting, but if I was not trusting, I'm comfortable saying that. Or what's factual for me is like I, I operate better with the benefit of the doubt. I know the amount of effort I put in, and I know that I don't try to wrong somebody. So bogging me down with having to make sure that things are presented in a manner or packaged in a manner that someone's going to trust it. I want to be able to say that work sucks and have that person know he's on my team and that work he's unhappy with, and be able to say it that plainly. But if I've got to dance around the presentation, I've got the wrong person. This is me as the authority, right? I'm able to build my team. My team needs to be comprised of people who are able to take direct comments. When I say that we're performing poorly as a company, I'm not saying you're performing poorly. I'm saying we are. No matter if they work for me, no matter how bad their work is individually on something, it's part of me. Like that blackness, that bruise, or that sore, or whatever you want to call it. I'm thinking my daughter fell the other day. She's got this huge black and blue mark on her hip. Though that bruise isn't on me, it hurt me, right, to see it. But in our business, I'm actually paying the price. Everything that's done wrong that needs to be done a second time, I'm footing the bill for. So it is our problem, not your problem, right? I've turned over responsibilities to them. This is a responsibility I'm giving them. That means you're doing something that I want done. I need to be surrounded with people who grab onto that responsibility. And so I have to trust them, and they have to trust me. And I have to be direct and not get bogged down with that energy sucking piece that's like, how are they going to interpret it? What are they going to say? Uh-oh, I don't want to offend them. Uh, Let me act like I really trust you and you really trust me. And when I do that, I'm able to speak freely, right? And then if I was offensive, you could say, hey, but that didn't feel right. And then I could say, I'm sorry, or I'm glad you don't feel right because it ain't right. And then we could have our conversation without all of the worry around it. But there's very few people that can do it.
Yeah. But that's the essence of why you wrote the book, right? Is
Yeah.
to get the people around you to align with the thought process and know themselves and be comfortable with themselves to have the difficult conversations and stay authentic to themselves, because ultimately you want everyone to be you, right? That's your biggest thing, is like, be you.
Yeah. Not be me, be themselves.
Be themselves.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. So if someone has the confidence to express themselves cleanly and plainly, right, authentically, like I can work with that. Even if I don't like what they're saying, I can work with that. To have to decipher whether or not what they're telling me is true, or they're trying to manipulate me or sway me, like I just don't want to spend any time on that.
Yeah.
I just don't want to do any. And so uh, the genesis of the book was around, I went along to get along in all areas of my life, and I suffered because of it. I was accommodating things in pursuit of what I wanted, right? But I was taking on things that I did not want to do. I didn't think they were right. So I wasn't behaving in an alignment with John. It was like I was behaving in a way, or doing things for a particular outcome. And I know we do a lot of things for a particular outcome, but a lot of that is more like manipulation.
Right.
The older I get, the more I see leadership as manipulation, that we're trying to sway an audience, right? And it's like, I want to shed that. I want to encourage people to be themselves. Don't pretend you're someone else. Like in relationships, do you want the woman to fall in love with the guy that you're not? Right? So why are you putting on the act? Be yourself, right?
But what if you were yourself at one point in a relationship, and then life happens and changes, and now you're a different person, yourself?
Well, I mean, will my core beliefs change? Maybe they'll be added to, and then maybe I have some faulty ones that would be removed. So I should only get better, right? Now I know that that's not the way that the world works, but I mean, it just shows you how important it is that relationships have that kind of communication and clarity. That a lot of relationships suffer because there's not courage in the parties to express what they really want. Now, why don't they want to? Right? Why don't they want to? And that's a whole different topic. But if you're afraid, and there's a fear of rejection, and in particular for entrepreneurs, there's this fear that they will be rejected if they're not accomplishing. So what they do is oftentimes they silence how they're feeling, right, and going along to get along, and they quietly build resentment towards another person, and then any interruption from that person, they will respond, or there are times where they'll respond overly aggressively because there's that resentment there that the other person doesn't even see coming.
Yeah.
But if you were to break it down, how many decisions does that entrepreneur make under the guise of, well, I'm doing this for the betterment of my family? Well, what about spending time with the family? Isn't that for the betterment of the family? Like, there's a lot of ways to produce betterment for the family, and maybe the gauge is off somewhere. And I think
Yeah,
that that's something that most entrepreneurs struggle with, is
definitely.
that in their pursuit of self-sacrifice, they do self-relationship sacrifice, and their spouse, their children, and other people suffer because their willingness to do anything for the business, for the betterment of their family, sometimes means that they're doing things to the destruction of their own family.
Yeah.
And that's a very hard mirror to look into.
Yeah.
So when you go back to why Steve was sharing his definition of a good man, and there's a bunch of components in there, but and that was great. There's all these other components that were missing. And so to have a full definition of a good man, or our personal definitions of that, it's got to take into account a lot more than just a singular feeling, right? So for mine, his was around being a good person, right? Mine's around being honorable. Like, if I had to say just one word, I want to be honorable.
Mm.
And then there's a bunch of things that support that. But I love when a man owns his responsibilities. I love it when the father looks at himself as the head of the house, in a way that says, I'm going to protect all of the people that are in this house, right? And so it's not a shared responsibility, though the tasks are shared. It's not a shared responsibility. It is up to me to make sure that my house is safe. Now, to do that, I've got to make a bunch of sacrifices, and I have to own the the situations, right? So I was talking with one of my buddies, and so I'm a big fan of having a spiritual director. So I have a spiritual director and a therapist, because these are just two people that are in my corner that want to support me in pursuit of being me, right? So that's
Yeah.
that's what they are.
Right.
And so whatever the items that I'm facing are there. Well, so my encouragement, well, I was talking to a buddy, and he's having some relationship struggles. Like, well, why don't you go see a therapist and start working through some of these challenges, because there's something underlying there. There's love there, and then there's some underlying issues there. Yeah, I told her, she doesn't want to go. I'm like, wow, that's kind of interesting, because oftentimes it's the husband that's reluctant to go. But then I told him, I said, well, make the appointment, right? Make the appointment, because at the end of the day, if you are the leader of the house, go lead. And if she doesn't want to follow, that's fine. But this idea that um, take it out of the conversation and put it into action, right? Like, that's our responsibility. We have to take the steps for protection of the family. We have to take we have to do that, even if it makes us look wrong. That's why we have so many battle scars, because we go into battle. So, like, I love to encourage men to be the warrior, to go in there, put in the work, and then allow for that. Hey, you were in the ring, right? Like a boxer, he comes back to the corner, and the corner's telling him, "Hey, you took on these blows unnecessarily. You got to keep your left hand up. Do this. You jab." There's this feedback because of the blows that they're taking, but they didn't say stop going out there,
Yeah.
right? So there's this encouragement, there's this feedback. So go out there and take the blows.
Yeah. Interesting. Um, it, for somebody who's buying the book and is going to go through the manifesto and answer all these questions, you did this yourself. So you wrote this. How did you get to the place of writing this? And like, what brought you to, like, was it to come to Jesus, like, my life is shit and I need to fix it moment, or what was?
I, so I have I have a clever tongue, right? So if you want to hear funny things from me, catch me aggravated, right? And I just start blasting, right? Or get me to talk trash and fantasy football. Those are the two things that really get me going on it. But if you look at frustration, right? Like, why do people invent something new? It's like they've had enough with a certain kind of problem, right? I've had enough. I'm going to fix this, right? And there's a lot of things about me that get misunderstood, even by people close to me, that are just flat out misunderstood, because they've got all the things that they've faced in life, and then my combination of strengths and weaknesses is not one that's textbook for them, right? So a lot of blanks get filled in erroneously about me, and it's actually fascinating how infrequently I'm properly understood. I mean, there's a it's unbelievable. So having to fight to get people that I employ to follow my lead, like think about how crazy that is, right? I want us to go over here and people don't want to go there.
Yeah.
And so there's a huge amount of frustration there. It's like, you know what? They don't know who I am. And then if you think about why don't they know who I am? Like why don't they know exactly what I stand for? Well, look at all the clouded information I've given by not being me. So I had all these frustrations and aggravations because I went along to get along. Nope, this is the way I want it. And that's enough, right? A great line for people to remember is that they are enough. There's so much of their life is lived not feeling like they're enough. So I need more information. I got to learn more. I don't know what to do. Like, act.
Today, you feel like you're enough?
Absolutely.
Do you feel like you're enough?
Mm, I don't know that I could say that. Honestly, I don't know that I could say that.
Yeah. See, I as successful as I could be, I still, for some reason, and I always use it as like the motivator.
Mhm.
Like, hey, you're not. You got to keep working. You
Yeah.
got to keep going.
Yeah.
You're not enough. Like, and I know that's like deep and like
Sure.
and challenging in so many ways because there's a lot of ways to interpret that. You know.
I think it's really simple. I think my confidence in saying that I'm enough is because I know what a good man is, right? To me, and I know how frequently I'm aligned with them. And so by doing the manifesto, answering the questions, I've made them as simple as I can. Some of them are challenging, but I've made it as simple as I can so you can get all of this raw data and then you distill it down and you've got your definition of a good man. And then other tools that we created for the book are how to activate it, right? People struggle with turning it on. Here's how you activate it. And then how do you recover when you get off track? So something as simple as a weekly one-on-one meeting with yourself, like literally just going through, hey, what instances in the past week did you do things that didn't align with your definition of a good man, right? And then do you want to do anything about it? Like sometimes I act out of alignment, right? And okay, I'm going to acknowledge it and I'm going to keep that in mind, mental note for next time. Sometimes I'm like, that's not right. This is a great opportunity for me to go back and say, hey, you know what, Frank? Last week I did this and that, and I don't like that I did that. I do this with my children sometimes. And I just like literally will call out, I don't like the way that I behaved on an item, regardless of whether or not they did something and this was my response. No, I don't like the way I handled that.
Yeah.
It's so freeing, right? It's so freeing because I'm not expected to be perfect and I am enough. But if I don't know my definition of a good man, what am I really measuring against?
Yeah. That's so deep. Like there's so much. I don't know how it makes you feel when you hear that.
Yeah, well, it's just interesting because I just think of, everybody's in a different place.
Yeah.
Right? So, and communication is critical. I think you get power dynamics in play. You get a lot of things, but like what you had your team start going through the workbook, the manifesto. That's smart, right? Because a lot of times, like let's say we haven't done that, and I don't know you. Like you may have hired me, you're the boss, but if I don't know how you respond, like you may be, let's say you come at an issue that seems abrasive to me, but it's not abrasive to you. It's just being direct and honest. There's a disconnect there. Now you've got two people that are not acting like themselves, trying to adapt to the other one because they just have no idea what the fuck is going on. And you see that a lot in relationships too. But I think circling back to like, am I enough? I think a lot of it too is like, in relationships in particular, when you have that breakdown of communication and you're especially when it gets complicated, you get kids involved, you get money involved, you get all these things involved. You can kind of trap yourself into this thing where like, okay, here's the definition of a good man. Here's, whatever it is. Like, this is what I think a great life looks like.
Mm-hmm.
But you continually adapt to this other thing of achieving these things that don't align with that you may not need, but, because of the different, dynamics of everything in life, right? You kind of, I think a lot of people just feel stuck, where it's like the grind. I just got to do this. I don't want to. I hate this. I don't like the way I feel. But it's just it got to be done. And some of that is just what life throws at you.
Right.
But I think I forget who wrote the book. Gerber, I think his name. I forget. But it's a great book. The Surrender Experiment. Have you? Very, very good. But his whole thing, is very, philosophical and woo-woo in a way. But the idea of like, identifying kind of where you're going, what you believe in context of this conversation, like the definition of a good man or what, and then just kind of like marching to that and understanding that you can only control what you can control.
Right.
And at the end of the day, being content, like I'm following my rule book of what a good man is. That doesn't mean that tomorrow I'm going to win the lottery because I'm being a good man,
Yeah.
but I can be very content on my path and just kind of trust that, okay, this is my authentic self. There's no better way to kind of navigate the world than being your authentic self.
Definitely. Like if you could just conquer the going along to get along piece, which I almost think should be the name of the book somehow. It's such a strong, compelling thing to really ponder is like, how often are you going along to get along? I think unconsciously people are doing it all day, every day.
Right.
Because the fear is, if I'm not, and I'm going to show you the side of me that
Mhm.
is, I think that's where I get stuck to is like, all right, if I'm not going to do the going along to get along, you might not like what I'm going to say to you,
Right. Well,
And is that my problem?
well, I think that where the going along to get along is mostly rooted in, if I told you what I was really thinking, you're going to reject me, and I'm afraid of being rejected. I think that's like the root of it. And so to cope with that and not wanting to confront that, we put on this mask that is overly accommodating. And so as an entrepreneur, it's very tempting because there's this accommodation of the client, accommodation, because you want them to make them so happy that they hire you again. And in that, it's like their needs become number one, their needs. It's always around someone else's needs. And then what happens is there's this request of the entire family that everything that they're doing takes a back seat to the needs of someone else. And I don't think we would give that advice to our children. Like, hey, find a guy or a gal that really loves you, but then when their work becomes a priority, right? Just go ahead and become second, third, fourth, fifth position.
Yeah.
Like I don't think we would give that kind of advice to our kids. But it's very when we have to provide and we have to do things. So it goes back to teamwork. And if you look, a lot of entrepreneurs fail to involve their family in that team, and because of it, uh, the entrepreneur is not as well taken care of, and that builds resentment. And I've heard people say things like, "Look at the life I've given you. Look at this beautiful house, the cars. You don't have to work, and look at all these different things I do for you." Okay, great. You've given me these material things. So Steve was saying earlier around like around his definition of a good man. Nowhere do we include in the definition of a good man um, what business accomplishments are, because what we're not doing is trying to say this is how you achieve all these different things, like building your playbook on how to be successful in business. That is a throughput of going through this. What we're really working on is saying, let's help you have a framework to make the decisions that align with who you are, so you remove all of that stress from yourself around, wait, did I make the wrong call? Maybe I should have done this and do that. Like all that anxiety creating piece of it, if we remove that and the person is able to act more freely, they think more clearly, they're less fearful, they're more deliberate about how they behave, right? And they're more direct in saying, hey, I need this and I don't need that. Here's some boundaries that I need, right? And an informed person, if you really understand yourself, it's easier for you to establish healthy boundaries,
Yeah.
right? Rather than reactionary boundaries.
Yeah, that's what I love about this book is because it's really working on the inner side of yourself versus just a business advice book.
Right.
Like there's a million business advice books out there,
Right.
but there's very little on building the character of a true successful entrepreneur and leader.
Right.
And I think that this book nails it.
Yeah, thank you. The podcast is around the inner battles of an entrepreneur, right? Like and the thing is, the difficult times, people spend so much effort, expend so much energy to avoid having a difficult situation. It's crazy. But where do they learn the most important lessons? I say, hey, the difficult situations is where God introduces me to myself, right? And I'm glad that He's given me the difficult situations because I really got to meet who I am, right? And so actively working to remove any possible issue and classifying difficult times equal bad. That's that that's kind of like evil at work, right? The changing of the definition of words. Good used to mean pleasing to God, bad was not pleasing to God. Now good is what I want and bad is what I don't want. But look at that manipulation,
Yeah. Never
right?
thought of it that way.
It's really powerful
Yeah.
because then you say, wait a minute, if a difficult time if you have to go through a difficult time in your life in order for you to learn a very powerful asset you have in terms of your temperament or ability to endure things or whatever the superpower that you'd be blessed with, would you go through that battle? And I think the answer would be, of course. I love that my upbringing was very difficult, right? I love it because this resilient guy I met, I really like him. This one that's got some creative solutions to things and got this can do no matter what kind of attitude. I really like this guy. And so if I didn't have those, would I still be that? Right? If my parents were present, would I still have my children be such a priority in my life? I don't know. And you know what? I don't want to find out.
Right.
Yeah. So
Wow. That's great stuff.